Hey there, I'm Jack, and this is It Pays to Write, the show where we break down simple writing skills and systems that can help you build leverage, security, and growth opportunities at work, in your business, and beyond. So whether you're a remote 9-to-5er, freelancer, founder, or aspiring writer, you'll find something here for you. Let's dive in. Our guest today on It Pays to Write is Dorien Morin-van. She is a social media and AI strategist for small businesses. She hosts her own podcast, Strategy Talks, which I was really excited she invited me to be on her show recently. She's a Vermont-based content creator. She's an international keynote speaker. She crushes it at short form videos. She's leading women's entrepreneur retreats and creating content with really cool and amazing female entrepreneurs in her local area. After talking to Dorien and getting to know her, I really believe that there's nothing she can't do. She totally reinvented her career just over a decade ago and is a self-taught marketer. And she built her business from the ground up just out of necessity and wanting to help local businesses. So I learned a ton from today's conversation with Dorien. I still learned so much from her posts, and I really hope that you get the same today. So enjoy this episode with my friend Dorien Morin-van. Hey, Dorien, I'm so excited and happy to have you here today. For anybody who doesn't know, Dorien invited me to be on her podcast not too long ago, and it was the first podcast interview I had ever done. I was super nervous, and I'm also incredibly grateful for you, so I wanted to say that right off the bat. But for Dorien, for anyone who doesn't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, your business, and kind of your mission, what you're working on now.
Sure. I'll keep it short. I'll try to. My name is Dorien Morin-van, born and raised in the Netherlands. So Dutch by birth, but American by choice. I always say that. Have been living in the U.S. for 37 years. Was a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home mom for a long time. And at age 40, when my youngest one started kindergarten, decided to start a business. Had no corporate experience, no business experience, which actually helped me jumpstart this business easy because I didn't know what I didn't know, which was really fun. And I'm a doer, so I just put into action things that I learned. And I took a social media course. This was 2011. I had taken an online course on how to become a social media manager and then started putting it into practice. And within 3-4 weeks was teaching small business owners in the Myrtle Beach area where I was living everything I was learning. I was just like paying it forward, but that was a great way for me to meet business owners. And that's kind of how I started getting my first clients. I started out as a social media manager, then became a community manager, took some courses, became a social media strategist. All along the way, I've been writing. I had my blog as early as 2011. And now I'm focused on both social media strategy as well as AI strategy for small business owners.
That's amazing. And honestly, there's so many cool aspects of your story that I kind of want to cover here. And kind of going back to when you decided to make that jump into social media marketing, what was it about social media versus video, which you do a lot of and are really great at now, and podcasts? And what was it about social media versus blogging or SEO or like website building and design or WordPress? What was it about social media that kind of drew you in first?
Well, I can say that none of it drew me in. It was one of those things that I had supported. My husband and I got married really young. I supported him through college, both a bachelor's and a master's degree, and I had never gone to school. So when beyond high school, so when I was 40, it was like, am I going to start 4 years of college? Our oldest at that point was 14. And so it was like, okay, am I, or almost 15, he's going to go to college before I'm done. Am I going to invest in a career? We're doing the math on return on investment. Besides, I just like doing things. And my husband, who was busy in the business world, I wasn't. Like I said, I really even didn't have any social media. He gave me this course and said, go take this course. I think you can help me with my business. That's actually how he brought it to me. And then once I started doing that, I have always been creative. I liked doing crafts. I was knitting. I was doing things, with the kids. The creative side of social media really drew me in. And when I took that course, that's when I set up my Twitter. That's when I think I might have had a Facebook, but I didn't have any of those. Think back to 2011. That was kind of the beginning, 2010, 2011, the beginning of the social media push. It was when people had been on it for personal gain, but very few people were on it for business. There were, the Meta suite obviously wasn't there yet. Maybe people were thinking about Google advertising, but people didn't know how to set up a page. People didn't know they can tweet things out and get a response. People weren't using social media for business just yet. So I jumped in it at the right time. I literally was the first social media manager in the town, in the area of Myrtle Beach. So anybody with any questions about social media or was anywhere curious would come to me. And I feel like it's come full circle in 2025. This is what's happening with AI. I was recently at a conference here in Vermont. They had a social media AI panel. And I realized sitting there that I knew more than the panelists, I think. And at least if I didn't know more, I was putting it into practice more. So it seemed by their answer. So it kind of like the light bulb went off. I'm back into the same area where I'm a doer. So I'm already using all the tools. I'm a very good teacher. I've raised my own 4 kids and a bunch of other kids as a nanny. And so I have a good idea on how to teach somebody something step by step. I taught all our 4 kids how to drive. Like I can make it into small segments. It's something that I'm good at. So do this and do that. So I think that's why I was drawn to social media, the creative side, but I'm also really good at teaching. And that's kind of how it's coming full circle.
That's amazing. That makes so much sense for you because something that drew me to your writing when I first saw your posts on LinkedIn, then when I first saw your videos, I was like, this is so digestible. And you could tell immediately from your writing style that you had a knack for teaching and relaying a message and compressing a lot of information into smaller spaces, which to a lot of people might sound simple, but that's a skill that can take years, the teaching aspect, the turning it into writing and things like that. There's so many interesting parts of your story early on too. So you started working in social media by necessity. Your husband was like, hey, I need this for my business.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like you went from taking a couple of different courses online and teaching yourself to you were probably the person in the Myrtle Beach area. It sounds like who people were coming to of like, Dorien, how do I do this? Like, what do I need to know about Facebook? What do I need to know about Twitter? Do you think what do you think it is about you? Because it seems like you've been a person who's been ahead of the curve in these things like social media. You kind of saw it, and by necessity, right? Of being brought into a business, seeing other people who have the need. Where do you think that comes from? Kind of your ability to spot that of like, oh, this is going to be a wave. Like maybe I need to jump on. You said you're a doer. Tell me a little bit about that.
A doer. I don't know if I saw the vision, at least not then, 15 years ago. I see the vision now. I think that if I had taken more strategic courses early on, or maybe psychology in college, if I had had some of that background, it probably would have propelled me a little bit faster through all of that. I'm a doer, but I also had to make all the mistakes in business to figure out 9 years in to jump to that 6-figure income as a freelancer. It took me 9 years. I think that, had I had more of a background, or I would have been less of a doer, more of a thinker. Maybe I could have done it earlier and scaled faster. I don't know. But I also, at the same time, my youngest started kindergarten, but every summer I had 4 kids home. My family's in Europe. I travel a lot. If a child is sick or needs something, I was the primary caregiver for the children. So the first 4 or 5 years, I worked from 7:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon without break. Those were my only hours that I would be child free, except in the summer. So then my summer hours would be crazy. I would get up at 5, work for like 3 hours, wake up the kids, go to the beach, put them in front of a movie at lunch, and then, work some more and then work at night. So that's a whole different story. But I think I scaled it the way I could. And I think that's the message that I want to give somebody who's listening to this. Don't look at everybody else's journey. I look at some of my friends who either don't have a spouse, don't have a family, or are single parents, or have no children. Everybody has a different journey. I raised 4 beautiful children. They're now young adults. And I was there with all the most important stuff that they needed me to. And so I was able to find that balance by not pushing my business faster. And I'm okay with that. And I think that that's the message. If you take anything away from this on this part of the conversation, is that everybody has their own journey. And just because you can do it faster doesn't mean you should. And just because you can scale doesn't mean you should if it's not the right time for you or the right way to work. During COVID, it was my prime time. I had two children returned home, adult children from college. We had just moved. I didn't know anybody in town, moved to Vermont. And everybody needed help online. I was literally working 70, 80 hours a week easy. I remember one night at like 11 o'clock, I'm sitting crying because I had to learn Airtable, which I'm a creative person. Airtable was not easy for me to handle. And my daughter came and sat with me and we figured it out. She's in college. She got a different brain than me and she helped me. But that is not the life I wanted to live. I did it for a year and a half because it was prime opportunity to earn a lot of money, to take on bigger project, to get into corporate. These were all opportunities that were given to me during that time. But as soon as I could push back and lay back a little bit, I did because it just wasn't sustainable. And I do think that as a business owner, you have to listen to that scale and do it when you're ready. And you'll know, sometimes you
Mhm.
gotta be pushed a little bit by other people, but, it's really your own push that you need to, listen to and catapult yourself forward at the right time.
100%. There's so much in there that's so important. If you want to make something work, you will find time for it to work. It can fit in every schedule. It doesn't have to be, a single person in their mid 20s who has 16 hours a day to like grind out building their own agency. You can
Yeah.
be a working mom with a full-time job or part-time job and kids home over summer and find a couple hours to sneak in here and there to make a business work. I want to jump into talking about the role that writing has played in your business, because something that has kept coming up and came up in our conversation too, we were doing your show. I just feel like there's this old skill that's kind of been made new again in marketing, and it's always been important for so many functions in business. But tell me a little bit, like, let's go back to your blog that you first started and then the social media content you were creating for your clients back in the beginning, like in 2011 or 12, you said.
Yeah, so I was really doing a lot of it was local businesses. So it was really talking about not just their products or services, but all the local events that were happening. So I was able to connect like services together. And this was really the early, collab, influencer marketing that I was doing. For example, I had a client, actually my longest clients, I still have them. They're a security company, and the wife does self-defense training. And so I connected them with a local running store who wanted self-defense for runners, right? The class. So they had this a similar audience. Another opportunity was I had a client who was a um coach for high schoolers to get into the right high school, right? There's people who pay for a consultant and a coach for 4 years of high school so the kids get ready for the right tests and then into the right college. Well, I connected them with the couple that owned the local a driving school because again they have the same audience, parents of high schoolers. So being able in being in a small environment localization, there was a lot of that kind of collaboration. So some of the posts that I was writing was tagging them but telling the story, and local events, was a lot of content created at these kind of events that then could go to two different businesses, right? And it's one story from their perspective and one story from the other, but really connecting them. I was doing some email marketing for them, all kinds of things that I just kind of was doing it all because a lot of people just didn't know anything. Now we have a
Mhm.
lot of specialists. So I really started out at that time nobody was really doing video. I know I started my YouTube channel 2011 or 12, but really nobody was doing video. I don't think my phone had the functionality of doing video at that time that I had. But I was writing a lot and I was writing a blog because I had read and I had met in 2014, I met Marcus Sheridan at a conference we were both speaking at, and he had the They Ask You Answer. And I'd already read about him and his swimming pool company, where you just answer every question that anybody ever asks you in your business. So I had started that process of, not doing it every day, but answering questions that people came to me when I was doing this teaching in the Myrtle Beach area. I was teaching people on social media and be like, well, now once I'm on Twitter, what do I do? How do I tweet? Right. And why is there only 280 characters on Twitter? And how do I start a page on Facebook? How do I make somebody else an admin on the page? So sometimes I would write. Eventually I started making videos too on how to, but initially it was all the writing, and I would take screenshots, and it was a lot of educational stuff because those were the questions I was getting. So that's what I was answering.
That's so wise in the early days because I remember those so well. I remember my first internship in Nashville, which is where I went to college. I was at a public relations company, and I was the youngest kid in there, and I had social media accounts. And I'm pretty sure in the interview I was brought in, and they were like, "Are you on social media? And do you post on there? And what accounts do you have?" And then I think they just gave it to me, and then they handed me their client accounts. And we're like, "Jack, we don't know anything about this. This is the Wild West. This is a new universe. Like, we just need you." And it's so funny because the conversation now is like you're talking about KPIs and you're talking about lead generation from blog content. And we have analytics to track that and all this stuff. But I remember those early days when people were like, "Dorien, Jack, we have no idea what we're doing. Can you build us a page and just post?" And like, and some people weren't even tracking like if a post is generating a lead back then somewhere, and that came around later. But yeah, when you were having those conversations with your clients back then, you think about how they've changed with conversations you're having now. Was it very much that they were like, "Hey, we just need a page. Can you just post blogs and do things for us?" They probably weren't talking about like SEO, keywords, like anything like, or even traffic capturing. They just knew they needed to cover important questions that their target audience was asking.
That for sure, answering the questions, but it was also an easy lift for me. Now, when I have clients, I say, you need to do long form content. Do you want to write a blog? Do you want to do a video? Or are you doing a podcast? One of the three. If you don't doing either of those and are not willing to do them, I can't create content for you. Then you need to create all the content and I'll just post it. Right. But if you do a podcast, I can get little snippets and I can get quotes and I can create content. If you do a video, same thing. If you do a blog, I can make audiograms. I can, do all sorts of stuff with it. So that conversation at that time was different. So I just said to my clients, you need to have a blog. And if you can't write it, I will write it in your tone of voice. And so we would do a strategy session, which I didn't realize at that time was a strategy session, but I'm like, what are your keywords? And so I was the one kind of guiding them through. And I'm not an SEO expert. I don't think I've ever become one, but I'm dangerous with tools and I can figure stuff out.
You
So I
are.
have helped several clients really get a lot of traffic through these blogs. There was a client who was a law firm, very specific law firm, offering, services to a very specific target audience. And we started blogging and it really, really worked. The organic traffic was through the roof because we were answering everything everybody was Googling. Now, that's a couple of years ago. I think if I were to go back, now you have to take into account, LLMs and, how people are using, an AI tool like ChatGPT. They might not be asking it the same way. So definitely things are changing again. But at that time, it was pretty simple. If you answered questions the way people were asking them, either on YouTube or on Google as a blog, you were going to get some of that organic traffic. And that's really what I was doing for the clients. And then on my end, once I had those blogs, I'm creative. I could create all sorts of content with that. So that made it easier for me. So most of my clients, I would blog anywhere between 2 and 4 times a month. And I would write the blogs and I would repurpose all the content. And then in the meantime, because I was local, I would go, eventually take some video or take pictures and go to events with them and connect with them. And that's how we get started with social media.
That's amazing. And you know what's wild, and I've been thinking about this so much, and you and I have been talking about this too. There's so much that still applies from great blog writing and SEO from those early days, 2011, 12, 13. I remember blogging back then too. It kind of seemed like, shooting fish in a barrel of like, oh my gosh, if I write a long blog on a specific topic of a question people I know are asking, it'll end up on page one somewhere and traffic will start coming in. And there's so much of that that's still true today. Obviously, the competition is way higher and the tools have changed and the analytics have changed. Let's fast forward to now and tell me about the services that you're providing for your clients. what kind of clients you're working with and what kind of goals you're helping them with, like with written content. And of course, you're great with video too, like your whole content suite and how you're helping your clients and what you're offering them.
Sure. Sure. A lot of I consider myself more a strategist and a content manager now than a
Mhm.
social media manager. I do schedule content for some of my clients, but I'm more of the thought leader, I guess, for them. So, yeah, we have weekly or biweekly meetings. We talk about what's going on in their business. Usually, I'm part of a team. I'm hired as either the strategist or the content manager. They might have an email marketer on their team, or they might have an executive assistant, or usually there's a couple other people on the team by the time I join, and then I am in charge of the content. So the meetings serve as a way for us, we have a running agenda, and you had this event, or what do you have upcoming in July, August, September. What do we need to prepare now to be ready then? So we're making an editorial calendar, a content calendar. What are you providing? What am I providing? Who's going to write the blog? Am I writing the blog? Is your copywriter writing the blog? And really getting to that point of figuring out who's doing what, and then whatever needs to be created that they don't have somebody on staff doing, I can fill in. The one thing I don't usually do is I don't write sales emails. I usually don't write sales copy for ads, but you and I were talking about that before the show, and I started doing some ad writing, which is a whole different thing.
And you said you hate it, so
Yes.
tell us how that's going.
Oh, it's not going very well. It's just I feel like I'm put in a box. It's not, and I think this is where, and I just had this conversation on LinkedIn with somebody. It's okay to use AI, and I'm like, can I just raise my hand? English is my second language. I use AI because I have all these thoughts and I hear all these other people speak English very eloquently. I am fluent. I understand everything everybody says. I don't know if I'm as nuanced as somebody who grew up speaking English natively. So I have all these thoughts, but if I put it in AI and just say, like, am I missing any words? Like, how would you make this better? Then it just sounds just a little bit better without taking my voice out of it. So AI has helped me do that. And I think when I'm writing these ads, I have to take everything I want to say in 125 characters when I'm talking about a meta ad. And I want to be playful and I want to give a bunch of options. And often it's the client who comes back and says, oh, that's not what I wanted to say, or this doesn't sound quite right. And I'm like, let's just play with words. Let's put some puns out there. Let's have, and
Yeah.
they don't always want that. I do still think that a lot of, uh, corporate and a lot of clients that I'm at least working with, even smaller, entrepreneurs, founders. I work with a lot of female founders that have, a couple people maybe as, freelancers working with them, an executive assistant, maybe a VA, and then they hire a social person. They're just so afraid to make a move, to stand out with their words. And that's what I'm finding is where when they let me be creative, it doesn't always work, but when it does, especially on organic social is where I can do a lot of testing. Then I'm in my happy place. So the ads, I feel like I'm in the box. With organic, if something flops, I could take it down or I can rewrite it. I can reuse it next week. I can repost it on a different night. I posted something Sunday night this week that I worked on for like an hour, and I just finished it and I'm like, I'm just going to post it. Crickets, nothing happened on LinkedIn, nothing. 2 hours. And I made the decision. I'm like, I'm my own boss. I just took it down. I just copied it and scheduled it to go out at 6 a.m. on Monday. And guess what? It did really well.
Hmm.
That's, you have then you're not that boxed into what you want to say, how you want to say it. But the writing for ads, I just feel like too restrictive. People are so worried. And I just tell people, just be different, dare to be different. Come on. Especially with organic, it's not just saying the different words, but also, the visuals, the images, the videos, show more of what you're doing. And I think there is this huge stigma that people just carry with them. They're afraid to share their secrets. They're afraid to show people the process. They're afraid to say, this is how I do business, or this is what I stand for, because they're afraid to pushing people away. Well, the reality is you're not for everybody anyway. If I say I'm woman centered, I still work with men, I still have coaching clients that are men. Most of my clients are female. And I think that's okay to say. So a lot of the content that I write is more focused on women business owners, but a lot of the tips anybody can apply. And I think that I'm trying to do more of that, showing that to my clients that it's okay. You still will land 20% of the others, but 80% of who you want to target is your target audience. And if that's females, then you have to really write at them. So that's kind of where I'm struggling with the ads. I'm just feeling kind of like,
Mm. And so the ads are for yourself. This is for
no,
promoting your own
no,
business. Oh, this is for a client you're working with.
that is
Okay.
for a client I'm working with, and I just feel 2 bucks in. I actually have to admit, I have only written an ad for myself once, but that's something that I'm working on. Something new I'm learning. That's the other thing that I'm really, this is a year of, learning the next big thing, which is AI, of course, but I also want to learn some more advertising, some Facebook meta advertising. You got to keep learning, never too old. And I've certainly moved along from social media manager to community manager to strategist to now, adding in AI and video, that I'm ready to add in some paid and just paid media and see what happens. If you don't like something, it's usually because you're uncomfortable. So maybe I need to do more of it to be more comfortable, and then maybe I'll start liking it. So that's kind of where I'm headed with it.
That's amazing. There's so many things about everything you just said that I love. I love that you're marketing yourself to women founders and business owners, because I think what you just said is so spot on. Of people think that niching down is going to preclude them from appealing to another audience. And what they don't realize is that you are going to get way more traction with the audience that you're speaking to and marketing yourself to. So your conversion rate or your inbound lead gen, or like whatever the metric is that you're focused on, your DM response rate on LinkedIn is going to be way higher. And male run businesses, or, husband and wife co-owners or co-founders or whatever, aren't going to shy away from your content, because they're going to look at you and they're going to be like, okay, this is Doreen and she's got this really awesome mission. That's not going to stop us from picking up the phone and calling her or talking to her and seeing if and I think it makes people even more inclined, because you stand out because of that mission, right? It's not like you're just like, hey, I'm a social media consultant and strategist. People are like, okay, yeah, there's 10 billion of those on LinkedIn right now.
There is,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, everybody and their brother and all of their cousins are right now. One thing that I think so interesting, what you just said in the writing vein. So you and I got very similar starts. I started with long form blog content, and my wife cracks me up because she gives me a hard time, and she's testing me to be more of a short form speaker. So because I'm a very analytical person and I hate to get long winded, so I'm working on compressing and doing that in my writing too. But I do love long formats and the deep dive and stuff. And I think it's a totally different challenge trying to use a minimal amount of space and an ad capacity versus like with organic content. Like you said, you can post something, you can take it down. There was only time loss. There's no money. You're not trying to drive a conversion. You're not trying to drive an email list sign up, or, like somebody accessing your lead magnet or whatever. What are some of the challenges, since you kind of started long form and going to short, that you've had to kind of navigate in that process for yourself and your clients too? Like how did you have to change your mindset of like, hey, I got to go from writing a 2,000 word comprehensive guide style blog to, man, I got to pack all of my value in 120 characters, 280 characters, 400 characters, whatever it is.
I've been writing for one of my clients is a nonprofit, and they had a very specific target audience, but also a very specific mission. And it has to do with children and a very sensitive subject. So the content I'm writing for them has to be educational, has to be understood by a variety of professionals, but also young parents, and so it has to be a mix of all of that, and it has to have the right tone. Plus, they are reliant on grants, so it needs to tick certain boxes. And the feedback I was getting is that my writing style was not the best, and of course I was first initially hired as social media manager, and managers don't always write, but I was creating visuals and I was writing. And so one of the things of feedback that I got, and this is years ago, was like, and this was with something else. I had to create a reel. And my editor said to me, do you watch reels? And I'm like, no. And she goes, well, I can tell by how you're creating reels that you're not watching them. And so that was like 4 or 5 years ago, and that light bulb went off, and I'm like, "Okay, to be a better writer, I have to read more," which, of course, Stephen King says that, in one of those famous quotes that, a lot of us might put out there. But if you wanna be a good writer, you have to be a great reader, a voracious reader, and so I've really started reading the captions and paying attention to what other people write and to try more different things. And sometimes I'll submit 2 or 3 versions and really dove into that. And I could tell you the last 2 or 3 years, I've gotten no pushback from anything I write for that same client. I've been writing for them for 5 or 6 years. And it's really made a huge difference because I've learned their writing style, but I've also improved to say what I needed to say in a shorter time frame, be more succinct. And that was partly because I wanted to get better, but also because I started reading other people's captions and understanding format and, all of those things that go with it,
Uh,
right? There's usually a cadence, a format. One of the things I started doing, saying it out loud, like reading it out loud to myself is like somebody who might be writing this caption and they might be, does it make sense? And then reading it backwards to catch the mistakes. Now, of course, we have AI, and Grammarly and all of those tools, but 4 or 5 years ago, not all of us were using any of, or maybe some tools, but not all of them. But that was really the turning point for me. And I've applied that to everything. That's when I started doing
uh,
video. And, really, if you want to be a good writer, you have to consume more content. If you want to be good on video, you have to consume content. If you want to be a good podcaster, you have to consume podcasts. This is
uh,
a basic principle. And yet, it was lost on me for a couple of years, so I'm happy to admit that, but now I've rectified that. But I have always been a reader, I just wasn't reading the right stuff. And so
the,
if you wanna go from long form to short form, stop reading the books and start reading the captions. It's simple as that. I consume quite a bit of content now every day, and it really helps.
that is so spot on. I can resonate with so much in there. And there are so many times where, because I freelanced for most of my career. And so many skills, once again, were born out of necessity. Of a client came to me and they were like, hey, man, you can do this thing. You can write blogs. Can you also write social posts? I was like, yeah, I can figure out social posts. So I consumed a bunch of social posts and I was like, okay, this is what seems like what's going on. I can do social posts. Hey, we need video. Can you do video? Yeah, sure. Can you write scripts for video? Never done that before. Yeah, let's give it a shot. That's what happens is that a client will come to you or you get to a juncture for yourself in building your own brand like you are. And you're just like, I haven't done this. I have to learn this. So I'm going to spend, 2 or 3 or 4 hours on the couch tonight or this weekend, just like browsing through some great ones. What's your process like? So there's a couple places I want to go here. I am so interested about people's processes for when you deep dive a client because in our space, in marketing, in writing, in SEO, and branding, and consulting, and strategy, something that's really near and dear to a lot of clients is voice, tone, style, articulation, like word choice, phrasing, all of those things. You mentioned that I think you mentioned you will do recorded podcasts or videos with some of your clients to kind of extract all that information from them. Tell me a little bit about that process because I think one of the most underused things that writers and marketers are doing, or they're not using simple recording tools like Zoom or an Otter AI, or now ChatGPT I think has their own like video
Scary,
recording
scary, because you don't have
add-on.
to consent to anything. Yeah,
I
so
know. Yeah.
one of the things that happened to me when I was a social media manager, I would get a client, they would sign on the dotted line, retainer, and then it's the Doreen show. I would go to their website and get information, and usually the websites are old and not updated, or I would meet with them or go to their business and take pictures or ask them for pictures. That was the old way. Once I figured out I needed a strategy to do this, um, my retainer doesn't start until they've paid for a strategy. So part of the strategy, part of the plan that my clients buy from me is because they're like, well, how much is it going to cost to retain you per month to pay for content management? I'm like, I don't know. And they look at me, what? I was like, I need to do a strategy plan because I don't know if you need Pinterest. I don't know. You might need to be on YouTube. I don't know your industry. I don't know you. I don't know who your target audience is. So we start with a strategy and that's a 90-minute. So it's a 3-week commitment on my end, 3 to 4 weeks. It's a set amount of money, and I go and deep dive into your business. So it's a 90-minute conversation with the discovery meeting. I record it, obviously, and I extract everything I need to. Then I go do a competitors analysis. I have tools for those. I do keyword research based on the keywords you give me, but also keywords I find because you might have the wrong keywords. We build out your avatar. But then one of the things that if the client agrees with it, I go and interview their clients. Or if they don't want me to, ask for them to give me reviews or customer service transcripts. I need to know what their customers are saying about them. So that's going to be part of that strategy. And then once I have all of that, then I'm going to look at, where they need to be, what platforms, all that stuff. Then I'm going to put a recommendation together on based on their budget, right? So what's their budget? How much do you want to spend? What are your resources? That's all going to be in the discovery meeting. If they're like, wait, we have somebody who could do video, great. If we already have an active blog, great, but we don't have a blog writer. So all of that comes into it. I do an audit of what they currently have because even if they say it's great, maybe it's not. Or if they say there's nothing there, maybe there is something there, right? So that's all part of that, all these different pieces. And then I have a meeting with them to deliver the strategy once I've written it. And then I can say, you can work with me. It's this much for retainer, hire me as a consultant, or I can train somebody, or here's the plan. Your team can implement it. So that's really changed my business model because it was really hard to step into anybody. And that still happens. I do still work for a couple of agencies. I do like white label work. And it's great, except that I'm not part of the strategic plan usually. So I
Hmm.
step into somebody else's plan. Makes it really hard because they might have not asked these questions or might not have done the keyword research or didn't dive deep enough in the avatar. And that's when writing content on my end becomes really hard because if they didn't ask about a voice, they didn't ask about mission, they didn't then I'm guessing.
Hmm.
And then that means that the first 3 months, I might have 8 edits for every social media post. And so
Hmm.
I usually try to like X that one and be like, I need more information. So if that happens, now I know to be like, I need to have a meeting with a client. I need to record, ask them a little bit more deeper questions. Who are they targeting? Who are they currently serving? Who are they selling to? Even if there's a strategy in place, I need to hear it from them. And then I
Hmm.
will go to like Google reviews. I will go to their website testimonials. Anything I can read that other people talk about them will help me figure out more. Those are the kind of things you can write content about. Have you spoken to Mandy? She's in the office today. Like use the things that your clients say to create great content. So you need that information. So I usually start with the strategy and the plan. And then once I have that, I can start a retainer and start creating content really, really fast. Will there still be edits? Absolutely.
Hmm.
But the best clients are the ones who are like, let's just test it for 3 to 6 months and then see what happens because organic takes at least 6 months to really take off for people to really get it. So, if I have that kind of freedom, I'm very happy. So, it takes a
100%.
while.
That's great. I love that process because I think that's something that, whether you run your own agency or you work at one, I think you get so busy you can try to accumulate the bits that you need from clients as you go, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to invest so much time on the front end to do a deep dive analysis of everything. I'm going to do multiple recorded interviews. I actually have a friend who runs an agency, and he told me, I mean, this was more than a decade ago, he was doing interview based blogging for his clients. And I was like, this is a really cool and different thing that a lot of people aren't. I don't know how many people, solopreneurs, agencies, writers are using this today. It's something that I've started to use a lot of just asking my clients, hey, can we record some calls so I can extract information from you? And then I can use that like in my own skills or like AI to like create style guides for you guys that we can use to write from and like speak to your audience directly, and that educates and informs us and becomes a part of our like training system. And the ones who we've used that for are they were happy with what we were producing before, and now they're incredibly happy now. And I think a lot of that is just going the extra mile. I don't even know if the output's changing that much, but it's the extra mile that you're putting in of like, wow, she recorded a 90-minute call with us and she's
Yeah.
using this to inform the process.
Yeah,
I
I
think
I
that's
have a funny
huge.
story. One of my first
Sure.
clients in Myrtle Beach was a cleaning company, and it was run by a British couple, and it was like a maid service, and I took over the social media because they really didn't have any technical skills. And one of the things, there were two kind of funny stories that came out of that. One of them was they were not in Myrtle Beach. They were north of Myrtle Beach. So they would
Mhm.
say the most southern town and the northern town, and all their copy said, we're in on the Grandstand, which is a name for Myrtle Beach, all the way from X to X, and never named the town that they worked in or all the 10 towns in between. So it's like the simplest way to fix some of your keyword is we're serving all of these cities, and we would
Mhm.
name them. So they were missing like the keywords of like even Myrtle Beach wasn't anywhere on their website. I'm like, oh, most of you clients are in Myrtle Beach. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is because they were British, there was this really certain way they spoke, obviously.
Mhm.
So I told him, I said, look, I'm going to call you a couple mornings, like different times of the day, morning, noon, afternoon. I want you to answer the phone. And this was before I had a recording device on my phone, but I would like call them and then try to write down how they greeted. They didn't say top of the morning, but whatever they would say, it was a certain way. And this was like 14, 15 years ago. They would be funny how they answered the phone. I'm like trying to copy it on paper so I could remember. So when I would write a post at 7 a.m., or have schedule something to go out, it sounded like them answering the phone. This is, pre-tools, but
Sure.
it's definitely, I knew that people could tell it wasn't them writing it. And I knew I wasn't getting it right unless I had this constant reminder. And I did a couple of those, and then I'm like, okay, I guess I can listen to like the BBC, or I forgot what I started listening to some stuff online that kind of got the same sound. But it's really hard to do that. So that was it just reminded me when you said your friend was doing that interview base. Like I did that.
Mhm.
I called them.
Yeah, I think it's so smart. I think there's no length that you can take really too far. It's hard to as a writer to the fact that you were going and listening to like BBC shows or radio to like get that's so meaningful to a client that you're taking it to that lengths to be like, hey, she's really trying to embody our voice. You also brought up something really interesting that as an SEO nerd I cling on to. This is still a problem we see today on websites. Like I audit websites all the time of where somebody will be operating out of an area, like a city metro, but they also serve all of these suburbs within the city or those like micro cities within them. I'm outside of Los Angeles. Like there's a ton of small cities out here. You need location pages for every single one of those places. You need hyperlink text to those places and those pages everywhere on your website, or people aren't going to be able to find you or know that you're there. That's still a problem that we see today. But yeah, that's really interesting. One thing I was going to ask you as it pertains back to writing, because you're doing this so much more for yourself now. Like I found your account. I think I lucked out and found you like through the algorithm. I think it was about a year ago through your written posts and your video content. What is kind of your mission for yourself? Like, how long have you been writing for yourself now on LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn has become this, I feel like we're in the golden window opportunity of this platform. It went from the place where you only hang out if you're either a super nerd, which is 1% of the platform, or you're looking for a job or looking to hire, which is the other 99%. How did you end up coming upon LinkedIn and deciding to commit to that for yourself and like create content there?
I came because I was frustrated with Twitter, and while I'm a visual person, I didn't like the look or the feel of Instagram as much. I just I just felt like I couldn't compete, which is really like weird as a social media manager with my own the I wasn't doing video and the pictures weren't doing justice, and I wasn't going to post a picture of myself every day because most of the time I was working in my pajamas. And so I just felt like that just wasn't the right place. So I started paying more attention to LinkedIn. And then there were a couple of spots that happened. I started doing some live video for a client. And I did that in a Facebook group for about 3 or 4 years. I did a weekly live for my client, and when it looked like they were going to sunset their business about 6 months before, I was like, you know what? I should do this for myself. So I kind of started doing it for myself. And then when LinkedIn Live came to LinkedIn, I was one of the first people that got it. I was able to jump in and get it. And then I lost it because I didn't use it because life got busy and crazy. So then I had to wait like everybody else. So that was the first kind of missed opportunity. Like I had it and then I didn't use it. And then then when newsletters came out, I started paying attention to what LinkedIn was doing because I figured out that was the place. So newsletters came out. I signed up pretty quickly, not as quick as some people who have 300,000 followers, but I have like 3,000 something on my newsletter, and it's pretty good. And then Top Voices came out about 2 years ago, and I figured out how to get one badge, and then two, and then five, and then eight. And so I kind of started writing about my experience on LinkedIn. And then last year, was doing live video. I'm in year 4. So this has been 4 years, almost every week. I go live on LinkedIn. And then last year I went to Tube Fest in the UK, spoke about video and live streaming. And I left there with one truth. I was highlighting everybody else but me with the live video I was doing. All of the videos that I was doing, I had a guest, and my guest was the super expert, and I was the facilitator of the conversation. And everybody who had created a YouTube channel or, got known was the star of the show. And in my show, I'm not the star. That's what I left with. That was May. And so in June, I kind of started making some videos. In June, I started making videos. In July, I'm like, I'm just going to do one every day. And the algorithm gods were with me, and LinkedIn started pushing vertical video. The app came out. I was on there, and I jumped on that ride all the way from the end of July to the end of December. They were pushing any content. I figured out their algorithm. I would post Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday 2, Friday 2. Anything I posted Saturday or Sunday wouldn't do anything, but my Thursday and Friday videos, usually 2 or 3, would get into a video feed. I had weeks that I had over 1 million impressions. It was crazy. That's probably when you found me last summer, July, August.
It
It
was. That's
was
exactly when I found you. Yeah.
yeah. It didn't matter what I was doing, but then I was like, I'm having fun with it. So I was doing series. I was like, how to hire a freelancer or social media strategy mistakes. Don't make these mistakes. And I was doing series, and then behind the scenes, and then I would take you running. And so for me, it was kind of like this freedom of, I'm finally featuring me. I'm finally doing that. And so I'm anxiously waiting what the next thing is with LinkedIn. I know video, they keep saying video is big. My video is tanked all the way from January until now, 2025. It is not doing what they say it's going to do. I haven't figured out the new video feed. I'm not in any of the trends. I've submitted videos for the trends. I'm not getting picked. So there's something. I do think some new stuff is coming, but whether, that's video or something else, I'm just having fun with it. It's a great platform for me to be. And there's plenty of small business owners that come to LinkedIn to learn and to meet people like me who can help them. So it is for me the best place. Instagram is not.
Mm.
I did restart my YouTube channel in April this year. So I am starting to make videos about AI now, not just social media. So I have some of those on there. And then my other big push is to repurpose everything that I'm creating, because I wasn't doing a good enough job of that. I do that for my clients, and I wasn't doing that for myself. So I started doing more video clips, and then I restarted blog. I just made a blog about our episode, and really using AI to repurpose this content that's original that I created with the help of an expert, and not just make a podcast, but also make a blog and clips, and I can do quotes. And so I'm kind of, waiting for the next shoe to fall on LinkedIn. But in the meantime, having really a lot of fun creating some content.
I think it's awesome, and you are crushing it with what you're doing. It is amazing that the time you just mentioned, that specific frame, I know it was August last year that I had found you, and I was like looking at some of your videos, and I was like, this is somebody I haven't heard of, and she's posting videos all the time, and all of these videos are doing incredibly well. And this ties into something I've wanted to ask you too. For you personally, your brand, your content, I want to talk about your system that you're using to create it, because you're prolific. You're posting all the time. Your stuff is great. You've got a mix of your own video. You have a mix of writing. Like the selfie video updates, I absolutely love, because those are just so real. I think that really connects with people nowadays. And so tell me a little bit about your content system. I also want to hear about what kind of opportunities you've already produced with your content through LinkedIn and you continue to produce, because it sounds like you've also gotten some really cool things from that too. So yeah, go for it.
So the content I'm using is I'm definitely looking very closely at my analytics about what topics are doing well. So once I started, I did this is, don't make hiring a freelancer a mistake. Like don't make this mistake when you hire a freelancer. And once I got like 2 or 3, I was like, this is something. So I ended up making like 25. And then I thought, this is working because, and this is the, psychology piece, people don't want to make a mistake. So when you're pointing out a mistake, they're going to want to watch the video because they don't want to make the same mistake. So the next one I did is social media strategy. Don't make this mistake. So I'm working behind the scenes on a new series that I want to test this or that. This is what people are saying, but you really should be doing that. In social media, AI, kind of as a business owner, kind of like, you hear something. And this is what happens all the time. People say, oh, I heard I need to be on Pinterest. And I'll be going, who did you hear it from? Well, and I'm like, well, what was their source? Well, I don't know. I'm like, well, do you think you need to be on Pinterest? And they look at me and they're like, I don't know. You're the expert. I said, well, I'm the expert in maybe on Pinterest, but you're the expert in your business. Do you think your ideal customer's there? And they're like, oh, wait. So these kind of myths, I think that this or that series that I'm going to work on, I think will be really good. And there are weeks and times that I feel really good physically, mentally, that I can create a bunch of stuff. I really like um, batch creating content.
Mhm.
So as much as the ones that I do on the go, my favorite place to do it is in my dog pen outside while my 3 dogs are eating grass, which is their favorite activity. I bring my phone out there and I make sure I have glasses because I don't wear my glasses all the time. And then I just talk and they're doing running, pooping, whatever they're doing behind me. It's really funny. Those videos usually are not scripted. Those are usually like, what can I think? What happened in my business today? Okay, let me just, and those do really well. But I don't have the energy every day, and I have to recognize that. So then other times when I'm, for example, recording a podcast like this, I actually took a shower today and washed my hair. So now I'm taking the opportunity to maybe create a couple more. I last week I did a couple podcasts and I had an hour in between 2 recordings. So I'm like, in that hour, instead of going and eating something or, working for a client, I'm just gonna take my phone and record a couple of these in the series. So batching content creation, ideas, and then, the editing I usually batch, and then I'll schedule them out in batches. So especially today, if I like wasn't changing my shirt and did like four shorts, I probably wouldn't post them 4 days in a row because I don't want you to think, I batched them. So I might do one on Tuesday this week and then next Wednesday and then 3 weeks from now. And so I do try to do that. So that's kind of the concept behind it. But I'm really wanting to do more. I'm also adding the newsletter back. So I'm wanting to do more trending type content of what's going on in my feed because I think what's LinkedIn is serving me right now. I don't know if you're seeing this, is content that's 3, 4 weeks old, which is
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
new and really annoying. But I want to have the trending content and I want to have an opinion about it. And I've really just like, I wasn't putting myself out there as the expert. I also have not wanting to put myself out there as an opinionated person. But I do think that the people that have a strong stance, get more views.
Mhm.
So I am trying to push the envelope a little bit there on that. So that's part of the process of what I'm trying to figure out. I am using Task and Chat GPT to find things on LinkedIn and get me a daily, you know, um, recap of what's going on LinkedIn. And so I just build a system. The save function on LinkedIn is very annoying because you can't really save anything. So I just posted like I build a whole bookmark file system for anything that I want to save. So yeah, I might still save it on LinkedIn, but if I really want to save it, I can do that. And then all my friends, I'm saving their profile so I can just find them very easily on the bookmark. And especially like guests for my season of the podcast, they're all there. So I can go and see what they've posted today, or, it just kind of makes it easier. I wish I could do that on LinkedIn, but I can't. But I'm trying to start thinking outside the box of what can I do to make things easier? What am I using AI for? And then showing that. So that's all part. I'm trying to show the process of working as a social media strategist in the videos and the content I'm creating. And that's also how I'm creating the AI videos that I'm doing on YouTube right now. Like when I've had to figure out chat GPT tasks, it took me a while to figure out like how to work it. And I'm like, this is a video. It takes me, who works in social media, you know, 35 minutes to figure out how to set up a task. I think other people are going to have a problem with it too. So I'm trying to be proactive. And even if I can't make it, then write it down. I have a whole bank of ideas of videos to make. So then when I do have time, very intentional, I'm going to create this, or I'm going to create that. Even YouTube videos, I'll do 2 or 3 in a row. It's exhausting, but just get it done. And then I'm done for a couple of weeks. You and I talked about podcasting. I batch everything for podcasting. I'll invite 20 people, then I'll make all the images for everything, then I'll download everything, then I'll work on all the scripts for everybody. And it's easier when for me, my brain works easier when I work on one task. So I'm working on video editing today. I'm working on video editing. I put my headphones in. I'm just doing all the editing. And so the same for me for recording. It takes a lot of energy. And if you're watching and listening to this and you're female, it's important to look good when you're doing video. That was one of my biggest things. So here's my tip. Your next hair appointment, make it first appointment in the morning. Go get your hair done. And then the rest of the morning and into the afternoon, block that time and create video, because you'll never look as good as the day that you get your hair done. So that's my tip.
I love that tip. This is a short, and this short is going to get shared, and I have a feeling people will repost this for sure. That's a great tip. Oh my God. Actually, funny enough, went to get my hair cut today before this, because I was like, dude, I can't be looking like a shrub of a person coming on this. You're right. It's important.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to ask you is, because there's so much, I have a feeling, people in my community on LinkedIn who are just getting started with writing, or who they're 6 months in or a year, whether they're a founder, they work a 9 to 5, or they're freelance, or they run their own agency or whatever. A lot of people are interested in processes because it's so hard, especially if you work full time in something that's a non-marketing or non-writing related job. I still feel like that's tough, but at least it's kind of creative gear shifting a little bit. But if you do this full time, like you and I both work in marketing, I want to know about your process for like how you approach, because you mentioned batch creation. That's a huge way to save time. I'm not even great at that because I do a lot of my writing like on the fly. I want to hear a little bit more about like on a daily basis or a weekly basis.
Sure. Well,
yeah. How are you capturing ideas? What does your synthesis system look like?
Sure. So, for example, I have several clients who I create monthly content for. Some they want 1 a week. Some they want 3 posts a month, 3 posts a week, so 12 a month. So, if for them, it's easier for me to batch content than make 2 posts a week if I have to make 8 posts. So, the previous month in the meeting, I'll say, well, what's upcoming? So, we have a meeting, we talk about events, and then we kind of set up. I create a Google Doc and put in there during the meeting, two posts about the event, upcoming event, 1 post thanking sponsors, 3 marketing quotes, like I kind of write it out, and then I get approval on the concepts. And I might put in, this is going to be a reel, this is the carousel, this is the image, and kind of write it out, and then that's done. I might not go back to that until the 1st of the month, or, the 25th of the month previous. And then I'll sit down. But when I sit down to create, the ideas are already there, especially when I work with a client and I've gotten their approval. Then it takes me a lot less time. I don't have to think about it. If it says in the document marketing quote, I've already done that research. I've already gone and figured out the quote. I just haven't made it and I haven't written the copy, but the idea and the concept, the proof of concept is there. And for myself, I do a similar concept of, what do I want to accomplish this month? Sometimes I do a theme, and this is what I did for years and years. I kind of stepped away from it this year because things are changing so much, everything that's happening in the world and the different kind of clients I have. But for a long time, I would say, what's the theme of the month for 12 months? So get that approval at the end of the year when we do the strategy session, November, December. And so say January is renewal. So it doesn't matter what kind of business you have, you can talk about renewal, right? If it's a health or if it's, a SaaS company or you're a plumber, right? There's always, you can talk about renewal. And then February usually is a great month to talk about love, customers you love, clients you love, staff you love, tools you love, vendors you love, right? So picking a theme for the month, especially if you get started with writing and you're the one who has to come with the ideas and bring them to a client, it's really nice to work with themes.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of depending on if it's a local business or a global business or national business, right? You kind of have to take into account holidays and what's happening. Like, for example, July, the month of July, in America, it's, America's birthday. You could talk about birthday or freedom or summer or, summer safety, depending on what kind of company you are. But those are the themes. And August often is, going back to school, going back to work, preparing, that's all a lot of, saying goodbye to the fun and starting back up. Often September is about, sweater weather or, going back, preparing for the holidays. So having that theme, that's usually if you're a new writer and you're writing for clients, that's what I would recommend. You could break each month into, each week, four different sub themes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I usually visualize it for a client. Say it's love, so then it is. For example, February, love your clients we love, staff we love, vendors we love, products we love. Boom. 4 weeks. Now you just have to tell me, what vendors do we highlight? What tools do that you love? What client project or case studies are we going to highlight? Makes it a lot easier to write content or create content. Sometimes we do something new. Sometimes, we already have this video of this client that we love. We just never posted it, or a testimonial we haven't shared in 2 years. Boom, it's done. But because you have this outline, makes it easier to insert it. And then if I do reuse something, a reel, I try to update maybe the audio or maybe the color of the background in the reel, or if the reel is great and was really well received, I'll update the copy. So I don't always change everything. People might feel it's familiar because they've seen it, but they won't think they've already seen it because I change it enough. So those are some little tricks.
Those are really great. I think the theme setting thing, I think this is such a helpful start for people, whether they're writing for themselves or they're just starting to write for clients, or if they're like building their own brand or something. It's so daunting. Like something I think about a lot is for people who first start to write on LinkedIn. I'm seeing a lot of people do like 30-day LinkedIn writing challenges now, which is super cool to like get people inspired. And I imagine they're sitting in their chair and they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to write about on day one and week one and all this stuff? But like you said, if you can start with something, if it's a theme of like, okay, what's going on in the world? It's summer. Are there holidays that we can write on? Are there other things that we can write on? What themes are other people writing about? Are there templates and frameworks that I can use or borrow from somewhere to fill in the gaps? Are those things? So you mentioned you use those for your clients. Do you also use themes, templates when you're doing your own batch creation for yourself? How do you approach that for you, like for your own content creation on LinkedIn or elsewhere?
Yeah, a lot of the content I create is based on the new clients I want to get. So who I want to talk
Yes,
to,
that
right?
makes a lot of sense, right?
So
Because then when you send them a DM and you made a post about, gardening or landscaping or like, custom home design or whatever it is, they're like, oh, she was writing about this and she did a video recently. I like it. I like
So
it.
right now I do a lot about video and writing about video because I ran
Uh-huh.
a reel retreat. I'm running another one in September. So I want to show what I do, but I also want to talk about Vermont because it's a lot of Vermont-based women-owned business owners, women businesses that are coming to the retreat. So that's who I want to target. So a lot of the writing is talking about Vermont and running in Vermont and working in Vermont and going to conferences in Vermont because that's who I want to connect with. So that makes sense, right? So it's based on that. Another idea that I wanted to give before I forget, and this has nothing to do with what you just asked me, but one of the things that I do and I have done, if you have a client that's with you multiple years, update guides. I have done a hurricane guide for business owners in XYZ state. and the 2017, 2018, 2019, you can update these guides, and you can update blog posts. You don't always have to rewrite stuff. You can update, like, it was 13 tips to take your children on a trip to Charleston, South Carolina. You can update next year 19 tips. You rewrite the same stuff, you add to it, you make it a little bit different. You can do seasonal stuff. Like, one of my clients that I've had for a long time, home security, 3 summer safety tips, 3 fall safety tips, 3 winter safety tips. A lot of the tips might be similar, they're just bringing it a different way. So think outside the box. If you can put those differentiators in there, seasonal, years, numbers, if you change those up, you can reuse some of the content that you already have. So I didn't want to forget to tell you that, because that's one of my methods, one of my things.
That's perfect. I think people forget that, and I get stuck in this too. Even as somebody who's a career marketer, I'll think like, well, I got to create a new thing because they've seen the old thing. And the reality is there's only a small percentage of people who are following you who saw it the first time around. And even the people who saw it the first time around, if you post it 30 days, 60 days, 90 days later, maybe you change up your hook a little bit. Maybe you change up the structure, the formatting, the lesson, whatever, the photo attached to it, that it's a carousel this time instead of just a pure text post, or it's a video instead of a carousel or something. Like, people are still going to resonate with that. And it's still helpful. You're right. It's like once you build up a database of, 100 great posts that you've seen perform, you can almost go back and just find different ways to change your perspective or retool or change the tone or the style or the format of something. Now, this is something I want to ask, like, because I'm so interested in what you're doing, because the way you've been able to balance like working with your clients, but also just being so intentional with like attacking content yourself on here. Like, you're so consistent on LinkedIn. You're so consistent with your podcasts. And you've got so much going on. You're planning these awesome women's retreats where you guys are like doing content creation together. How are you? Because writing can be so daunting and time consuming for people who are getting into it. Like, you and I can spend 2 hours on a post, or we can, that might not perform and we take down and repost on Monday, which I've done. I just did that this past week. I posted one like late Friday night. Crickets. I was like, I'll just repost this like tomorrow at 10. Posted it on Saturday. It went great. Talk about your kind of like your time management approach for creating your own content. Because I know creating your own content is so important for building your engine of attracting clients, for building your brand. I know you've gotten speaking engagements and stuff from your LinkedIn directly, right?
Yeah. Actually, you asked me that question earlier. So I've gotten a couple of brand deals. I've gotten speaking engagement. I've written for one of the things that happened after I started my own blog. I also wrote for a lot of different tools and blogs. So I've written for Agora Pulse. I've written for StreamYard, tools that you and I know. Some of those blogs have my name on it because I was using the tools and I was writing for them. So that's one thing that came out of the doing the videos. But yeah, several speaking engagement, travel opportunities, got some free merch. So and a couple of clients. So yeah, it's good. I got a webinar. Somebody approached me because I started hitting, end of July, August. I did a paid webinar in September. And yeah, it was great. Definitely visibility. So one of the things that I do is, before I actually write, and I think this is just my own process, I do a lot of thinking. And that's when I was saying, like, using a Google Doc, if I write the blog process for me, and I've done this for years. Say I need to do, I want to do 3 blogs for the month. The first thing I'll do is research on what it's going to be about. Then I create 3 Google Docs and put the topic on it the same day, all one day. And then I'll go to Headline Analyzer. I get a killer headline, and I literally will just put those in a folder and bookmark it. That I might do that the week before. And then on Monday, I know that I have to Friday, if the deadline is Friday, to work on it all week. But here's the thing that a lot of people miss, and this is from the agile marketing where I'm from. The one of the frameworks that I use is that a lot of people work only with deadlines. And if you're a writer, you probably work with deadlines. But very few people think about it as where's the starting line. So my starting line is the day that I make the Google Docs with a headline, and it's usually at least 5 days out from the finish line. So that gives me enough time to think about it, to formulate, to think about the outline. So, because the next thing I do, once I have the headline, maybe the same day, maybe the next day, I'll go back in and be like, oh, I know the outline of this one blog, and I'll write the subheaders. They might not be permanent, but I'll write them in. And so it'll be like, 5 reasons to take your children to Charleston, South Carolina. And I'll be like, oh, they have this awesome park. And I did some research, and, I write them in. And then I have that. So then I can think about that. So then by the time I actually sit down and write, I just write it all out. And then I will walk away. And then I'll go back, and maybe the next day or 5 hours later, and then I edit. So it's a process of that. So if you have never, it's called a sprint in Agile, is when you have either, or one, usually it's a 2-week sprint, and you work with the team and all that stuff. I'm a team of 1. So I've adapted my own little sprint. But in my mind, I have a starting line is when I put it on the paper, on the Google Doc, and I have a finish line, a deadline. I never miss a deadline because I have all this time to get there. And even if something happens on Wednesday, if the deadline is Friday, if I've already started it on Monday, even if on Thursday night at 8:00, I have to sit there and write, all the other stuff's already done. The pressure of, I have to think of something to write. Oh my gosh, what am I going to, deliver tomorrow is not there. You take that pressure off. So that's how I've been able to write a lot, write consistently. I do the same thing with podcasting. I just invite people. I invite like 20 people at a time. I put them on my calendar and be like, okay, now I've got to go figure out what we're going to talk about. I have all these times in my calendar. I'm going to do it. But that's my starting line. And the finish line is a day that I either record or go live with them, but I have all this time in between to work on the little batches of stuff. I hope that makes sense. But that's my process.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Honestly, I think that simplifies writing and so much more for so many people. I think people, and you know this because we're both runners, I think people look at when they say, I want to run a half marathon or a 10K or a full, they're just thinking about the end result. And that's really daunting. It's like, I'm going to run 26.2 miles next year. Like, that's scary. And most people need to just be thinking about like, well, what's the first step that I need to get there? I just need to get the shoes and get out and take my first run and see how it feels and set like a minimum viable standard to show myself I'm going to do this. And then I know it needs to be more structured. I need a training plan. I need an outline of a training plan. I need to block out my next 6, 9, 12 months of runs. So I think this is so spot on for, especially for people who are writing and creating, whether it's brand new for clients or for themselves, and they want to build their brand and get some great inbound opportunities like you're already getting, is that don't overwhelm yourself with like, oh my gosh, I have to build an entire media engine and brand and logos and everything overnight. It's like, no. I have 3 blog ideas. I just need to drop them in a Google Doc today. And then I'm going to think about them this week when I'm on walks, when I'm on runs, when I'm taking the dogs outside. And if I get some ideas, open up your phone, pop open that Google Doc bookmark, and you just outline it. Our systems are very similar. I'm sure our toolkits are really similar too. Like I have one thing people don't realize about writing, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Dorien. Writing is something, there's a great quote on this. Writing is happening all of the time. And I think when you tap into that ethos, it like you kind of go crazy with it. So like I open up a new Notion doc at the beginning of every month. So I have like my June brain dump going on right now. The problem with my June brain dump is I get 2 to 3 new post ideas a day from comments, from your posts, from other friends I have on LinkedIn, from browsing the feed, from my own comments and things I say on other people's posts, from ads I see out in person from other blogs I read. And I think something that changed my perspective on writing for myself, and that can take you from, oh, I have 0 ideas, I don't know where to start, to I have so many ideas, I'm never going to be able to write them all, is like you said, have some kind of capture and thinking system. Like write down some ideas that you have. And it's funny that the more you practice writing down your ideas, the more ideas you'll start to have on a regular basis. So people, and I think people can run this test if they're interested in this. Write down 1 or 2 ideas that anybody who's listening to this, you have today, and then see how many you get tomorrow. And then test yourself for a week and see how many writing ideas you get, whether it's like audience oriented for something you want to do on LinkedIn or grow your side hustle or your business, or you're, a solopreneur, or you just want to get more followers on LinkedIn to see if you can generate some inbound opportunities like Dorien or myself. And it's crazy like how many more ideas you have. And I'm sure you see that same thing too, right? Of like, you'll write down an idea and then you're like, oh, there's 2 or 3 more other things that I can create here. Do you find that?
I do. And I don't use Notion. I often just scribble stuff in my notebook. I have a
Yeah.
notebook all day long for every meeting and I just go back in there, but I do have sticky notes that I put on the wall and then I order them in importance. But I had an idea for you. If you have too many ideas, that would make a great blog post and say, "Free ideas. I've got too many ideas. My month is almost up. I have a new Notion doc starting. If you need some ideas to write about, here are 10 free ideas." That would make a really good blog post for you, Jack.
That's a great idea. I think I'm going to have to do that, turn it into a post. And so I can get some people in my email too. I'll drop it as a giveaway and I'll just have people like and comment. And you can get your 10 next post topics on me for free.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. And I love the idea of giving away ideas because I think people treat them, especially with like writing posts, people can treat ideas with scarcity of like, oh, well, I might never get another post idea this good. And it's like, if you're going to keep writing for like years, if you're going to keep posting on your LinkedIn for years, if you're going to keep doing more podcasts, if you're going to write to your blog, there's a very low likelihood that this is the best idea that you're going to have. And even if you have an idea similar to it later,
Right.
it's probably going to be better because in 3 or 4 months, you'll be a better writer. You'll be a better marketer. You'll be a better branding expert. You'll be a better strategist. You'll be a better creator. So you'll make something better down the road. So if you have an idea that's not, Uber, Instagram, TikTok, it's just like put the idea into a post and give it out there to people. So I love that idea. I might test that as soon as next week of just like giving some ideas away at the end of the month. So
Yeah.
thank you for that free tidbit. I was going to ask you too, since we're talking about like writing and content systems, I don't want to take too much of your time. Are we okay on time right now?
We're
We can
good.
wrap it up soon.
We're
Okay.
good.
So you had this great post that I had to take a screenshot of last week. And I'm such a dork. I've probably done this for like 5 or 10 of your posts now. It started with, I spent the afternoon writing blog articles for my own blog with ChatGPT. Hear me out. This is my process. And you kind of went and broke down your process and the tools that you're using to streamline some writing and content creation with AI. And I think these systems are going to become so prevalent because if you're a pure writer, which is great, you're going to be able to make good stuff. But if you're already a tested writer and marketer and you've been doing this for well over a decade, like both of us have, I still don't think people realize the lever that these tools are for making you faster at what you do and getting you to like 95% of something that you would actually create. So tell me about your process and how you're doing that with blogs and content, because I'm so interested in AI content systems with people.
8 blog posts in less than 3 hours, and they were finished and uploaded. 9, 6 of them published and 3 scheduled.
And I'm sure they all sounded like you because you know what you're doing as a marketer.
I did sleep on it this weekend, and I do think I am going to go in and I have one idea to make an update on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did put quotes in. So basically what it is I have these podcast interviews like you and I are doing on my podcast, and they are video podcasts. They go live, then it becomes a podcast. And then I have some clips. But one of the things that was missing is I on and off in the last 3 years, I would make a blog and then I would make another blog and then I would stop because it's very time consuming to go over transcript. And then I didn't want to just post a transcript on my blog, which is something you can do. It's original content, but it's not user friendly. You can put the transcript on there and say, I interviewed Jack Wilson. Here's the transcript. That's not good enough for a blog post to me. So I wanted to create a system, but every time I did, it was a lot of work. So I really thought this through, and I had created a GPT a couple of weeks ago and I was testing it. It's called the video to blog. And so I tested it on my YouTube videos initially. So I would make a YouTube video anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes and then say, here's a transcript. You know my voice. Teach what's in this in a way that people can read. Don't use emojis, make it sound like me. And it was pretty accurate. So on last week, I was like, okay, let me try it for my podcast because I hadn't done that yet. And it did it really well. So I really I just was like, once I got it going. So basically I go to YouTube because they're all on YouTube. They're live. It goes live on YouTube. That's the easiest way. I have an extension called Glasp. You can take the copy and paste the transcript. You don't even have to download it. The extension just makes it. You push the button, take it into the chat GPT and into the GPT and say, here's the transcript, here's the bio of the person I interviewed. Make sure you write it from my perspective, Doreen. I'm answering the questions or asking the questions. They're answering. Here is their full name. This is the topic we talked about. This is the keyword I want you to focus on in the headers. Go. And while that's going, I'm in Canva creating, an image header. Then I go take whatever headline they came up with. I don't always love it. I go to Headline Analyzer. I put the headline that they came up with in there. It gets a score. I usually change it because I like to get a higher score and get a better headline. So I go back to ChatGPT and go, this is pretty good. Use it, this headline with the same keyword, change up what needs to be changed up, insert some quotes directly from the transcript from not just me, but also, and it did a beautiful job. I ended up, I think 9 in like 3 hours. And then I would embed the YouTube video because you can just click on the video and get the embedded code in there. I then embedded the podcast because some people might to listen. So even if they read it, they can still listen to the podcast or watch the video at the end if they want to. So it's all connected. And now all of those are going out. So now I'm like, that was pretty fast. So I might do the other ones. I don't think I'm going to go back to 24, or 23, or 22 to do it. But moving forward, I'm probably going to do it once a month. It was really quite easy. And is it great? I don't know. Is it good? Yeah, has a lot of
Sure.
wisdom from my experts that are talking about, you talked about AI content and, answered questions, and it has a lot of bullets and it's an easy read and good headlines, and people are going to learn something. They want to dive deeper, they can listen or watch. I think it's valuable for my blog. It'll help with SEO, and it's just another way to put content out. So that system works really well. But yeah, I had tested it on my YouTube videos, and I was pretty pleasantly surprised with it.
I love that. And I feel like A, we're definitely turning this into another clip so we could share with people. And B, I think people who are watching and listening to this, they should, for anybody listening to this, replay this and steal and borrow from Dorien's system, because this is still, it just blows my mind even now in it breaking the media, how few users are still using AI tools to its full potential, especially marketers. And everything you just described of taking one piece of content. Hey, I've got this podcast. I have a video. I have an interview. This is how I turned it into multiple pieces of content. The tabs you opened, creating those images, thumbnails in Canva or whatever. It's so fast. And it really is incredible. But I think one of the misconceptions here, and I think we both can speak to this, I think a lot of people are like, well, I'll just open up ChatGPT and I'll tell it to write a blog on something and it'll come out great. It's like, no. You can't do that. And I think there's so much more training that needs to go into it. Like, I'm sure your ChatGPT, your Claude, your go-to AI has so much context and history of you. Is that correct? Like, it just knows, it has posts of yours, it has transcripts of yours, it has blogs of yours, it has edits that you've done of content that it's made where you've told it, hey, this is wrong, this is what I do instead. And I think that's something that marketers who are new to AI get wrong, is they're like, oh yeah, well, AI can just like do this thing for me. And it's like, what does it know about you? Because if you go to, there's an example that I used recently. It's like ChatGPT is like you're walking into the world's greatest like multi-level kitchen, and every amazing chef in the world is there, and every single ingredient is stocked in the refrigerators and the pantries and stuff. But if you walk into it with zero context, and those chefs don't know you and this place doesn't know you, and you're just like, hey, make me some breakfast. It's like, okay, well, what do we make you? Are we making you eggs Benedict? Are we just scrambling you some eggs? Do you want avocado toast? Are we making you a breakfast sandwich? Are we making you a breakfast burrito? It doesn't know what to make you. But if you build up this history and context and train it on like, hey, this is me, Doreen. Here's my mission. Here are the different arms and levers of my business. Here are my ICPs and who I'm trying to serve here. It needs all that to be able to create like you.
Yeah, one of the tips, another tips, if you're just starting out and you want to build your own chat GPT for, say, LinkedIn posts, go to your analytics on LinkedIn, find your best performing posts, just take screenshots of them. You can upload them and tell GPT to read the text in the screenshot, makes it really easy, and say, these are my 10 best performing posts. Before you create anything else, tell me what you see in here. What's the pattern? Why did they do well? And then, take that knowledge and feed it back to your GPT and say, so moving forward, remember, these are the points. This is the content that resonates well with my audience. So, and that's a constant training thing. That's a constant uploading new content. If I have a new podcast or I have a new post that does really well, add that to the lineup. So, and then every once in a while, I'll be like, here's some new stuff. Is there anything that you see a pattern, or I really want to, hit on this audience this month, right? So really want to focus on Vermonty kind of stuff. These are posts I've created before, what else can I talk about, kind of thing. But yeah, it is it's pretty amazing what you can do. And like I said, I keep rediscovering new ways of learning. And I think that this whole conversation was about writing, but it's really about learning.
It
It's
definitely is.
it's you never stop learning and never stop doing. And the act of writing, I've wanted to journal and I can't get myself to journal. I've want to, write for fun, which I don't get to, but the blogging has become one of those habits that once I am done with something, I feel really, really good. Kind of like when you and I were talking about running, if I run early in the morning, my day is great. So if I do blogging, for me, writing early in the day, I don't do well at night. I feel like I can't think. So also figuring out what is your sweet spot in writing. Blogging takes longer than a social media post usually. So figuring out what's a good time when you feel good, when you are not hungry, when you're in a good place. I can write and the world around me can end, I can be in noise. Once I'm focused on something, I can write. But it's having all these other preparations. So figure out what works for you. And when you and I were talking about running, everybody has their own little routine. If I don't put out my shoes and my clothes the night before, there's no way I'm running at 6 a.m. I won't, because I'll get up with the dogs and then I make my coffee, and once I have coffee, I'm not running. But if I put the intention out, like I'm putting out my clothes, I look at the weather app. I don't usually have to set my alarm because my dogs wake me up. But, have the intention of going out and setting a goal. I'm running 4 miles, I'm running 6 miles, then I'm going to go do it. And I think that's the habit that you do when you write. And so whether it's short form, long form, whether you want to write a book or a blog, or for copy, book that time with yourself to sit and do that.
100%. I think that's a great piece of advice. One thing that I've been writing a lot about on LinkedIn and sharing with friends is you don't need a ton of time. You just need a reliable system and a minimum viable either amount of time or number of words that you want to hit a day. And I always recommend people do short form in social media versus like a blog or even just like notepads, because it can take a while for a blog to rank and build credibility with Google and like get out there, especially now there's a lot more competition and people are just using, really bad prompting to write bad content. Unlike you, who's writing really great content the way you should be with AI. Thank you very much. But I would recommend people pick a minimum viable amount of time. It's like Dorien said, if you're first thing in the morning, you can find 10 or 15 minutes to just like jot down a couple ideas in a notepad from an audiobook you were listening to, a conversation you had with a friend, a post you saw, a headline you saw, a funny comment that you read on like a video you saw earlier that day. Just write down 100 words. It doesn't even need to be that. And then find a public place to post it, because one thing that I love about social media is you get faster feedback loops. If you have, it doesn't matter. And this is something we could have covered also, and I would love to have you back on and talk more about the opportunities that come through writing in LinkedIn, Dorien. But if people are sharing a post in public, something that can come from that, and on LinkedIn or X or Substack or wherever you're writing, if you have 100 people on there and you start writing, things will start coming to you. Like my audience is a fraction of your size, and just in the last 5 or 6 weeks since I've done your show, I've had a software company reach out to me and they're like, hey, dude, can you do a paid demo for us? I've had other people hit me up for partnership stuff, other people for podcast things or like guest posting or collaboration. Like, you don't need a big audience to get opportunities from writing online. Do it in public on social media where you can get fast feedback on like, hey, this is what works and this is what doesn't. Dorien gave a great piece of advice of screenshot your best post and make sure it includes too, and I think this is a good one, Dorien, make sure in your screenshot that ChatGPT can see the number of likes that it gets, the number of comments that it got. And if you really want to go to the next level, screenshot some of those comments too, so it can have the maximum amount of feedback of like, oh, now we can really start to aggregate of why people love this post, what was resonating. The hook, the rehook were spot on. Like, it seems like people really love when you use like emoji bulleted lists or like whatever it is. And then just block like 10 or 15 minutes a day to do it. And then I think so people don't overthink it. And I think, Dorien, you'd probably echo this too, of like, when it's done and when you've given it the edit, if you're first doing this, you're going to be scared to hit post, but just ship it. Just like post the first one and know that it's not going to be your last. And people aren't going to judge you, especially if you're writing on LinkedIn. I'm sure you found this too, but gosh, when I started writing on here like last January and I made my first post, I think I even wrote like, guys, my palms are sweating when I hit enter, but here goes nothing or something like that. And like everybody was so supportive. Like nobody's like, I mean, I think it's platform specific too. LinkedIn's a very, like, it's a bunch of, positive nerds like me out there who are hanging out and trying to be encouraging. But yeah, Dorien, what are, in wrapping this up, for any marketers out there, anybody who's working a 9 to 5, any day job, or anybody who's just interested in getting into, writing online, doing this professionally, using it for themselves to like maybe grow an audience or a brand, or do something on LinkedIn or another platform, what are some like parting piece of advice you would give people?
Become a creator, a content creator. The difference between a social media manager, a content manager, and a writer and a content creator is that the content creator sees the content and then makes the content, sees the opportunity. And it kind of goes like this. You're walking at the airport and you see a funny situation, somebody with a funny looking suitcase and, their shoes are falling off and you're thinking, oh, that would make a great story. I would think that and not take out my camera because you don't want to take a video of somebody who something happens. The content creators who are successful are creating that content, are taking their video camera out, then creating a story around it and sharing it, usually in a pretty good light, maybe funny, right? You could be on a run, Jack, and you could see a deer. How many times do I'm like, oh, I'm trying to get my phone and I'm running and, it's going to be a great, I usually don't stop. The content creators are seeing the opportunity and taking the opportunity. So if you're that writer who sees a headline and then thinks something, do it. That's going to be the difference between getting paid to do something because you have to and loving what you do and then getting paid for it, right? So become that content creator because you see that and those who can, and I feel like finally last year when I started my journey with the short form video, I started doing that. I started looking at situations. I pulled out my phone. I'd be on a walk in the pen with the dogs. I'd be in the car waiting at an appointment and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I had this thought. And actually taking that action and doing it when you have the thought, that makes you an actual creator. And so now I ahead of time think about the stories that I want to do and the shots I want to take. And that's the next level. So that's, that takes a little bit more, but what you must know what I mean, Jack, you must know. You see something and you're like, oh my God, that would have made it great. Do it. I also recommend reading other people's headlines. I read Costco magazine because I love the headlines. They're professional people that get paid, write these headlines. If you're looking for a headline or a story or something, go through a magazine. You probably read Runner's World. They have great headlines. Use those ideas. Use that for inspiration to write your own stories and write your own stuff. There's very few original ideas left. Take somebody else's as inspiration and then write your story, your angle, your side of it. That's the best advice I have.
That's incredible parting advice for this. Because like you said, Dorien, everything's already been said, but people attach to stories and how they start to know and like and trust a creator. And it doesn't matter what size. And I think people get caught up on like, well, I don't have a lot of followers and it's going to take a long time to get a lot of followers. It's like, hey, look, those will come if you keep showing up. You just need to tell stories with your funny insights and interesting perspectives. And that's enough difference to be likable, to find the right people who are going to like your stuff and cling to it. And again, like you said, Dorien, like when you find an idea or you see a story, I think people can just build the habit of like, I'm going to record that or write it down. And one thing I'll say for people who are intimidated to write, just to piggyback off of your advice, is if you're not going to write because writing's not your first work skill, use a voice memo, use a voice recording, use the voice dictation in ChatGPT. It's incredible. And just say, hey, like I was in the car. We were on the way back from vacation over the weekend, my wife and I pulled open ChatGPT and I got I thought it was a really funny idea to take something down. I was like, I'm going to forget it if I don't do this. So I hit the voice record button to ChatGPT and I was like, hey, remind me later about this funny idea that I had. So I think that's incredible. Take down your stories. Your stories and your perspective are important. And rip the Band-Aid and start posting. I think there's so much opportunity for everyone in writing online at this point. And less than 1% of the global population are creating content. It's probably a fraction of 1%, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and now we're gonna get, now you're gonna, quote unquote, you're going to compete with AI. Well, you're not. If you're writing original content, even with the help of AI, you're going to stand out, because eventually I read statistics that in 2025, it's going to tenfold the amount of content that was online previously in all the previous years. Now, I just read today that somebody said, is the AI have the AI floodgates opened? And somebody said yes, it's opened, it's there. And so every day it'll be exponent. The amount of content by the end of this year is going to be crazy. So if you can stand out and you tell your stories your way and you can be authentic, even if it's short form, even if it's social media, do it, because that's going to be, people are going to want to do business with people who speak people
100%.
language.
100%. People who speak people language. And Dorien, I just want to say again, thank you so much. It is an honor and I'm super grateful to have you on here. Like I told everybody earlier, you were the first podcast I've been on ever. And that was so much fun. And that's why I had to have you on here. And I would love to have you back in a couple months when you have a ton of fun new updates for us. And with that note, where can people find you online, just so they can, and I'll make sure to include those in the notes here too.
Sure. I'm most active on LinkedIn, as we talked about. So I'm Dorien Morin, and I usually go by Dorien Morin-van. LinkedIn made me just be Dorien Morin. But my business name is Morin Media. You'll recognize me by my orange glasses and not to my Dutch heritage, I always say. Born and raised in the Netherlands. So if you see, and it's a funny spelling, it's a Dutch spelling of Dorien, Dorien. So pretty easy to find on all the platforms. Like I said, I'm not as active on Instagram. I am active on Facebook, so feel free to follow me or connect with me there. But LinkedIn is really my happy place.
That's perfect, guys. And I will encourage everybody, go check out her website, morinmedia.com, correct? Go listen to her podcast. She's had on a lot of really amazing and interesting guests. I've already learned so much from your show. I can't wait to read more of these blogs that are coming out and to drop a line to you and be like, hey, so how much of this was written with your AI that's coached on you? But
yes. Well, that I wrote down an idea somewhere. Like I said, I'm going to do some edits because I had an idea of what I needed to include and I can easily edit them. But that's pretty cool.
I love it. Well, Dorien, thank you again for your time and for everything. And I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thanks for hanging out and listening to this episode of It Pays to Write. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit follow or subscribe. And if you could take a couple of seconds to drop us a positive review, this is a huge help for us so that we can continue to help others by helping them find the show. And if you're ready to level up your writing and AI skills, make sure to grab my free AI writing roadmap. I created a totally free 5-day action and information-packed email course designed to take you from a casual AI user to an AI wizard and a digital writing rockstar in just 5 days. You can sign up now at aiwritingroadmap.carrd.co. That's aiwritingroadmap.carrd.co. See you next time.